Welcome to the ReWilded Human Podcast, where Dr. Lucille, holistic psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and Dr. Lynn, naturopath and nutritional consultant, help you reconnect with your true self through practical tips on mental health, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and spirituality. With a dash of humor, they tackle today's toughest issues to guide you back to a harmonious, vibrant life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 70 of the ReWilded Human Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a very, very complex issue, and that is female friendships. And why is this complex? Because we love our female friends, our girlfriends. They are super important. We can't live without them. And they can also be a huge source of frustration in our lives. So we're going to talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, everything, right, Dr. Lucille? We're going to cover it all.
Absolutely. Yes.
So
Well, we're gonna turn everything into something good, won't we?
Definitely.
Yes.
Most definitely. Most definitely. But you have to agree that some of the most challenging relationships we have are with other women, be it mothers, sisters, friends. No?
Yeah, you can say that, although there are a lot, I think, of myths. There are a lot of myths about female friendships,
Let's talk about the myths first, then.
Okay. But one of the things that's very interesting, there isn't a lot of research. There's some research about female friendships, but not a lot. And one of the interesting things is, why are female friendships so important to women? Because, if you look at what is considered satisfying to men, the married men are generally more satisfied than married women. If you look at just their subjective ratings of life satisfaction, right?
And they live longer as well.
And they live longer as well. And if you think about it, women's satisfaction actually depends more on the quality of their female relationships. And, it makes sense, right? Because as women, we are tuned in emotionally. We need emotional support. We need somebody to confide in. We need somebody to occasionally gossip with. We need somebody to have fun with. The men in our lives don't always provide that, or not to the same extent, right? So if we only had our men, it would be, I think, a rather challenging and stressful life, right?
Very
so for us, I think more than men, friendships are like our lifeblood. It's our lifeblood. But there are myths, and there are ways in which we are not taught, how to do friendships well. We run up against weird stereotypes. We run up against our own issues when we're in relationships. And those issues are, if we haven't resolved them, they can make or break our friendships. So friendships, yes, can be very challenging, very challenging. So, you're talking about the myths. So what would, Lynn, you tell me what you think some of the most common myths are about female friendships?
I guess the cattiness, the competition, that we're not supportive of each other, that we are, jealous and spiteful, and we'll stab each other in the back. And I mean, we've all experienced that in our lives. It's a myth, but it's also, there is some truth to it as well, right?
There's some truth, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you nailed it pretty well there. So I was listening to a very really experienced female friendship coach, and these are the myths as she has compiled them from her research. And so there is, you mentioned it, jealousy, competitiveness, drama, that relationships with men come first, and passive aggressiveness. Okay. And as you said, Lynn, they all do rear their ugly heads in friendships, but they're not that common. And I'll tell you, from my own personal experience, I really have not experienced a lot of competitiveness in my female friendships. So when women would, or, my clients would talk to me about it, I would say, I would validate, of course, their experience, but I would think, wow, I've never actually had that. And that may be as a result of a number of different factors. But, women will have a wide range of experience with female friendships, and some females will say, my female friendships have been the thing that has kept my life going, and they're just, whenever I need something, I know I can always turn to my female friends. And then you'll have it at the opposite end of the spectrum. You'll have the women who say, I can't stand female friendships, too much drama, too much work. I'm more kind of the woman who would gravitate to the men in the room. It's so much easier having relationships or friendships with men, that sort of thing. So you have to also look at, where are you? Where are you individually in your own personal development, in your life experience, in the season of your life? How much work have you done on yourself? And what are you intentionally or unintentionally drawing into your life, right?
Yes.
So
Very true.
yeah, so I would say these stereotypes only go so far as the individual examples, and that everybody's individual example can be very different.
And don't you think also it's much more difficult, and these things will surface more when you actually have a group of girlfriends rather than
I
when you
agree.
have a group
It's
of
tricky.
girls, then you get the mean girls. It's like whoever's not there, everyone's talking behind her back, and I think that happens a lot more. Like my friendships right now are really interesting because I have, several different friends, but I have different friends for different things. I have one that I'm hiking with, one that I would confide in if I had a problem. Like they're compartment. So it's really great because it's like I wish I could do that with a husband. Have a husband, one husband for this, one husband for that, another, like for all the different things, which you can't do, which is quite sad in Western society. But it's really great that we have this opportunity to have different girlfriends for different needs.
Absolutely.
And again, then you don't have to put all this pressure on one friend, and this one friend has to be your everything, right? Which very
that's very damaging. And you've brought up another thing which I think is really important, which is your expectations of the friendships.
Yes.
If you are putting all your eggs in the basket of, oh my God, this woman has to be everything to me. She's got to be my savior, my confidant, my go-to for all sorts of practical advice. I should be able to call her up in the middle of the night if I'm having a hard time sleeping. And you're gonna kill that friendship so quickly.
Pressure,
way too much pressure.
And I've been that, like I've been that for other women before.
Yes.
I'm like they're everything, they're go-to there, and it's just too much on me. I don't want that kind of responsibility because I'm an empath and I'm a very good friend. I have to be honest with you, Lucille. I don't know.
Yes, you are. I would say you definitely are. Absolutely.
And as you are as well. But I'm a very kind, generous, giving. I will listen.
Yeah.
You can call me at 3 a.m. and everything. So I'm a very giving friend. And sometimes people take advantage of that. And sometimes people, so those friendships don't last very long because it's really important for me, for whatever I give energetically, I need to get that back. So even if we're complaining and our lives are tough and we're going back and forth, but we need to be able to not just suck the life out of the other person, but also give something back. And when I feel like we have this give and take, then I just feel at ease and I feel very comfortable with the person. When it becomes very one-sided and the person just always wants something from you and they're always complaining and they're sucking the life out of you, then I'm like, oof,
Yeah, exactly. And that's when you have to step up and set boundaries. Absolutely. Exactly. But you just to circle back to your question about the groups of friends, doing things in groups. I do find that really tricky. And I know a lot of my clients do as well. And so I'm personally, and I know a lot of introverts are like this, personally much more comfortable with just, contact with one or maybe two friends at the same time. I'm not one for the big groups because I can pick up energies very quickly. And groups of people will be giving off all sorts of weird and wild energies.
Yes.
And it's the rare group of women who are all at the same level of maturity and have got their act together. And when we are in groups, it presses our buttons more sometimes than when we are in a one-to-one.
Yes.
So,
You prefer one-to-one as well, right?
I'm
One-to-one.
sorry?
You prefer one-to-one friendships as well.
I do. I generally do. Because let's face it, there's so many complexities, even in a one-on-one, even if you're both very mature and you have the same outlook on life.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you will notice that things are a little bit off. Oh, she doesn't look very happy, da da da, or oh, she said something that could that have been a criticism? You're getting so much stimulus just to
Yeah.
one-on-one sometimes.
Yes.
It's so much easier to handle one-on-one. If you're in a room full of people and you've got like two really catty, insecure people in that corner, and you've got, somebody else who's just, taking the limelight and talking and talking and blah 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 blah, and then you've got somebody else behind you who's giving off a very negative vibe but not saying anything. I mean, that kind of drives me nuts personally.
And when you're sensitive to energies, you're picking up on one
Yeah,
of those different
yes,
characteristics.
yes, yes. So I doff my chapeau to all those women who can do group friendships well.
Yeah.
Bless you. I think that you should write a book on that for
Yeah.
the rest of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a friend who organizes like women's circles. And in
right.
theory, it sounds so amazing, right? They do like the red tent, to symbolize the period, and they do all these meditations and all kinds of stuff together. And sometimes it works out really well, and sometimes it's a disaster because it
Yeah.
really depends. It could be just one person that just brings the whole group
Whole
down.
group down.
And
Yeah.
I've been in these group settings,
Yeah.
and I have to tell you, I always feel like a fish out of water. Like I don't belong here. There's always a lot of crying,
Yeah.
but I'm not
Yeah, yeah, and
like that.
I'm not into huge drama. I mean, if a
Um,
person is having a heartfelt experience and they need to cry and whatever, that's perfectly beautiful. That's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
But I don't need I should say I don't resonate with huge amounts of drama. I see it all the time in my practice, right?
That's what I
But
was gonna say. You get enough of
I
that.
don't I don't need it in my personal life. And that should be okay. And I think that's one thing that women need to think about when they're thinking, I need to increase my friend network. Okay, that's wonderful. But let's be intentional about it. Like be honest about what would be a good friendship for you, right? And everybody's maybe slightly different, but if you don't have in your mind the set of values, the non-negotiables, that sort of thing, then it's kind of like online dating. I mean, you could be out there for years looking, and coming up with the wrong person a lot of the time. So it's really important to be intentional. And the research does show that people generally people have similar things that they gravitate to when it comes to what they think is a good friendship, right? So it would be in things like integrity and support. And another one that's really interesting is congeniality. Congeniality, okay?
Yeah,
Um, so congeniality is just being kind of positive and friendly. That's what
yeah,
it's like.
yeah.
The integrity has all sorts of layers to it. If you think about what is integrity for you, recently, well, not so recently, last year sometime, I had a friend and we met under really intense circumstances. We were both in a kind of movement, right? I wouldn't say political movement, but a movement. There's a lot of people were, getting
In the
into
movement. Yeah.
in the movement, right? And she was wonderful. I really loved her, and we were part of a group of four, and it was just a lovely, lovely grouping. But things sort of we drifted apart when there wasn't as much intensity about the movement, right? Because, we were different people. We came into it different people, and we gravitated to different areas of our lives. And this one friend, we maintained contact, and I knew she maintained contact with one of the others. The one thing I began to notice, which was a little bit surprising to me, was how out of integrity she was without knowing that she was doing it. Like, she is the kind of friend, they call it flake. The flakes on you. Like, they make a date, and then either they forget about it or they make an excuse not to show up, right?
That's the worst.
And that is the worst. And I kind of drifted unconsciously. I was busy with my life. And so every time she would contact me, and she would say, well, why don't we get together on such and such a blah, blah, blah day or whatever. And I would just say, okay, sure, fine. But in my mind, I was going, whatever, I don't expect you to show up.
Yeah.
And I would even make my own plans on the same date.
Yeah.
I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't stop to wait,
Yeah.
because I knew she would either completely forget and not even get back to me and say sorry, or she would, contact me, 10 minutes beforehand, say, sorry, sir, I'm driving home from the cottage. I can't make it. And I thought, this is craziness. Why am I putting up with this stupid pattern? It's a stupid pattern. Like,
What
what?
did
And
you do?
I confronted her. I
Mhm.
said, listen, this doesn't work for me. And she would always say busy. Busy was her big, tagline excuse. Busy, busy, busy. I knew there was more to it than that, but I didn't want to delve in. I didn't want to tell her what her problem was. I just said,
Yeah.
okay, I understand busy. I respect that you've got an extremely busy life. However, for me, I would prefer if you don't have the time to get together, don't even bother promising. Don't even put it out there. To me, it just feels more transparent and respectful. I have no judgment about that at all. I would feel better if that's the way we handled things. Got crickets. I got crickets. Nothing back from her. And I thought, okay, well, I wasn't broken up about it. I just thought, okay, she's a lovely person in many other ways, but it's a clear sign from the universe that I am meant to just cut the cords and move on, right?
Well, because respect is very important in a friendship. And I
Very
think when
important.
you're flaking on someone all the time, then you're not respecting. I mean, you're also a very busy person, Lucille. So, I mean,
Sure.
she should have respect for that, because I think our time is really our most precious commodity. I think we both agree on that. So we don't like people messing with our time, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that is something that a lot of people will point to as a big factor for them in what makes a good friendship,
Mhm.
is that integrity piece.
Yeah,
Um,
reliability.
yeah. And again, there are so many people who do not think it through. Like, they don't think it through, and a lot of people who will operate, there are two extremes, right? The people who will do anything to keep the friendship because they're desperate
Yeah.
and lonely, right? And it doesn't matter how badly they're treated, they're just desperate to keep that relationship. And then they're at the opposite extreme, they're the people who are so self-protective that they'll cut off a relationship
Mhm.
the moment something, not necessarily the first moment something goes wrong, but they'll just
I,
basically they'll cut
I've done that in the past. I have definitely done that.
yeah,
I can
yeah,
speak to that. But
yeah,
as you say, with the life circumstances or our lives changing. I mean, for example, when I had my son, that was a big change. So all of a sudden,
sure,
my girlfriends who were still single, not married, no kids, they just kind of dropped out of my life, because
yeah, yeah.
you are looking for friends with other babies so the kids can play
Hmm.
together. And all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like, a single girlfriend doesn't want to come over, and you've got the kid running around, and they just can't relate to your life anymore. So when something like
yes,
this happens, things really change. And I know it can be very difficult if we talk more about women our age, is that, once when somebody becomes a widow and you had
yes,
mutual friends that you were hanging out with, and now
yes.
people are not inviting you because it's all couples, and so that can be a very,
Yeah.
very difficult time for women as well.
Yeah. And yeah, and the same thing happens with divorce, because there's so much divorce, gray divorce, that happens in later years. And really, it leaves women floundering. And that is one of the interesting things, that generational difference too, right? Because we grew up in an age where we weren't interacting so much with digital devices. We were having actual physical contact with other human beings. So even if you didn't know how to connect with people, you began to learn, right? Even if you were very, very shy, you would develop one or two friendships, right? And so from my generation, in my generation, we're kind of lost because friendships came easily. You met your little girlfriend when you were in kindergarten, and you said, "Oh, I really like you. Let's be friends." And then you might extend that friendship for a very long time, and it was so easy. It was so easy, right? Or you met in university, you were dorm mates or something like that, and oh, you clicked, and you went through the rest of your life together. It was easy. It's very hard now for younger generations. I really feel for women who are in their 20s, who are much more connected to their devices than to other human beings. So they have to learn. And I would suggest, you know what? There are plenty of relationship coaches out there, friendship coaches.
There are friendship
There's
coaches.
Yes, and
Wow.
one that I would strongly recommend people follow. She's on all the Instagram. I mean, she's on all the socials, and she has a very thriving community. And her name is Danielle Bayard Jackson, and she does an excellent job. She's got a podcast. She does an excellent job of coaching women through the whole friendship journey. And when I listen to her stuff, I go, wow, it was never so complicated in my day. But she is brilliant. She pulls together all the information, and she walks people through it, and she kind of prompts people to think about what they want in relationships and how to go about doing it. And I like her orientation, which I think a lot of friendship coaches are into, which is to really try and work with the problems that you face in your friendships rather than just ghost the person, or just disappear or cut them off sharply. There is so much in your own personal development that can happen when you stick around to try to figure out the problems.
Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah, so
I think in friendships too, once you get burned a couple of times, it's like in relationship, and then you've got this wall up, and it takes
yeah.
a lot to kind of break through that.
Yeah, that's true. But then you have to think about, well, the other person's situation, okay? Because, for example, how much anxiety is there in this world, right?
A
I
lot.
mean, every other person you see on, the socials, or even in your own social circle, is complaining about being anxious.
Mhm.
And if you're befriending an anxious person, or you are that anxious person, you may want to ask yourself, okay, do I give up on this person because they're acting erratically? Or do I learn more about what they're going through and talk to them about it and ask, what would make this friendship better for you? And then you decide, is it something that it would make the friendship better for me? Because if you eliminate all the anxious people, you're going to have a very small
Yes.
group of
Small
friends,
circle
right?
of friends,
Very
definitely.
small,
Yes,
right?
that's for
Yeah.
sure. And with the young people, I mean, no wonder they're anxious. I told you in the summer, the place where I go swimming, it's all students working there. And there's like, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 students working there. And you walk in, every single one of them, they're sitting in a huge group, and they're all on their phones like this.
Yes.
Talking to each other. How can you make friends
Yes.
like this when you're all off in your own virtual world? And it's like
Absolutely.
children. You see, friends go out for lunch, or big families go out for lunch, and everyone's playing on their phones. And grandma's sitting there staring at the ceiling, or she's playing too. But And
Yeah,
we are so disconnected now. It must be so much harder to find true friendships.
it is. But there's also more interest starting up in how to form friendships, which I think is a really good sign.
Yeah.
And but you brought up also a very interesting aspect to this, which is, what depending on the life stage you're at, that will change a lot about your friendship landscape, right? Like you had a child and you noticed that, your childless friends just kind of drifted
Disappear.
away. Yeah. To a certain extent, that's kind of realistic, right? Same thing if a woman finds a relationship with a man, right? You kind of have to give her some grace to say that takes time and energy. She's trying to, maybe she's really wanting to get married and she's found somebody who's a good candidate. You got to give her grace that she's going to be spending a lot of time and energy trying to create a really good relationship with this guy. And rather than get all, pissed off that she's not there for you as much as she
Yes.
was before, you would do far better to maintain the friendship and just support her, you
Yes.
know, and say, I understand that this is taking up a lot of your time and energy. I kind of miss you and I would love to spend more time with you, but I get it. I know that this
Yeah.
is important to you, right? We
Yeah.
have to put ourselves in the position of the other as well and give them a little bit of grace and give them the support that they might need because we're going to need it at some
Absolutely.
point too,
Absolutely.
right?
That reminds me, I had a friend and we were kind of in the same, this was like a network marketing thing that we were in many years ago. And we were traveling to, I don't know what place, somewhere in Alberta. And we had the rooms booked, her and I together. But then, this was like a year before. So after that, I got married, I was pregnant. So, and my husband also came because he was also part of the company and everything. So, we all flew together, but she was expecting me to go and stay in the room with her while I was married and pregnant and obviously staying with my husband. And this
Right.
became this huge drama that I'm choosing
Yeah.
my husband over her. So there are like your post, Lucille, that you put up a couple of days ago about like, lonely people that are looking for friendships and they often become very, very needy. Right. And
Yes.
she was like, she would get upset and jealous if I would spend the weekend with my parents instead of her. Like you're always with your parents and I can't do friendships like that. That to me is
Yeah.
so exhausting,
Yes.
especially when
Yes.
you're talking about, taking away time from my parents, my son or my family, my husband. Like, come on. Obviously, that's going to be number one always.
So how did you handle it with her?
The friendship ended soon after that. And then,
Oh,
then I kind of tried again with her and it just didn't go anywhere because she's just
yeah.
that type of really super needy person.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
never changed. And I just can't. So after that, we didn't talk for
Uh,
a year.
yes. And I think there are times when you just cannot go there with the other person. It just
Yeah.
as in this example that you gave, you would just sacrifice
No,
your own life. Are you kidding? To
no, it's
satisfy
ridiculous.
because right. So I always think, and I've not been great at this my life. I must admit, I always think if you're going to end a friendship, that you do it in a way that is, empathic and respectful, and maybe leaves the door open for future encounters,
Yeah.
if things work out. I used to do things like be the angry ghoster,
Yeah.
right? Or I might say something really harsh, blow up.
Yeah.
I rarely did that, but I do remember one spectacular incident of doing that.
How did that go?
Oh, it was just horrible. But I could talk about that if you want. But the point is that I think we don't know what the other person is always going through, and they may not know either. That's the thing. They may not have insight that they're acting like a 5-year-old. They just think, well, this is the way it is. It's like breathing air. It's normal to me. I don't see any problem with it.
Mhm.
And so people at the receiving end of their neediness, at some point they have to make a decision. And you kind of have to say to yourself, listen, this person may be going through stuff that I don't even know what she's going through. She may not be aware of what she's going through either. I don't want to traumatize her by blowing up at her, but you have to kind of script something. You kind of have to have an intentional script about, well, how do I say this to her that I'm basically saying goodbye. I'm basically saying goodbye. And
I've never actually done that.
yeah, I think this is something that we really need to practice a lot more
Yeah.
as a civilization, because it's one of the things that drives us further apart, and it makes for more trauma in friendships where people go, oh my God, I'm so scared of trying again to make a friendship because look what happened. This person I thought was my friend blew up at me. Oh my God, and I don't want to leave a trail of
broken hearts.
broken hearts and traumatized people. I just don't,
Oh, no, I don't either.
Yeah.
But do you think that do we still need to have friends? Like, is it still as important as we're getting older as when we were young?
Even
more so?
I think even more so. And you know why? It's because, we do need the mutual support of all the challenges of growing up. We need that mutual support with another woman. But when we're older, we also need more depth. I don't know about you, but a lot of women, need somebody to reflect on life with, somebody to share deeper feelings with, somebody to really lend a level of support that you just don't have when you're less mature. Your husband's dying of cancer, right? And you need your friend there to really be there for you. You're facing life challenges that a lot of younger people haven't yet experienced. But yeah, but the thing is the depth, the meaning of interactions, I think becomes a little more rich as we get older, and that's why we need we really do need friends.
And more, you cherish them more. You kind of
Yeah.
them more as well.
Yes.
I really do
Yes.
think that you can have very deep friendships at any age, and it's really nice that you can make friends at any age, because we get a lot of questions on the podcast about, well, how do I make friends? Where can I find friends? And you still can. But what do you think, Lucille, about like friendships that start online, like virtual friendships?
Yeah, that's another really interesting new development in our world, right?
Yes.
Like you and I have never met in person. We started, connecting over Instagram, right? And then it blossomed into us collaborating on this podcast. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. You never know how friends are going to enter your life, and now a lot of the time it is online.
Online, exactly. Yeah.
Very
interesting, because what's great about online is that you can really see, like, with us, our values aligned and our worldviews, and during the past 5 years, we saw things the same way, which is, I think, another thing that's really important in today's friendships, is that you do have similar worldviews. I think that's important.
It is important.
If you're seeing things completely
Yes.
from a different angle, I would have a very difficult time having a friend like that. So it's interesting, because you can almost like pre-screen people online.
You can, but you also have to remember the limitations of online, which is it's so much easier to show up your best self when you feel like you can put that on, right? And you don't get the fullness of the energy field of the person that like you would in the physical.
Yes.
I don't know. You can be fooled. You can be fooled, I think, a little more easily with online relationships. Not that they don't worked out beautifully for us, right? But you just have to be more careful. And one of the things that people, I think, need to understand is that there are layers and layers to people. We all have layers. And what we present on the surface is not necessarily in alignment with, the layers and layers within us, right? And it's like online, I think it takes longer to suss out whether this is the friendship for me.
Mhm.
Because if you're really savvy and sophisticated in how you see people, you will notice that I don't think it's a good idea to trust what I see on the surface unless I have seen this person behaving consistently on social media for I don't know how many years, right?
Yeah.
Maybe years, right?
Yes.
You have to be very vigilant. I mean, even if you know people in the flesh for a long time, sometimes they can really surprise you that something pops up at you 5 years down the road in the friendship that you had no idea was there, right?
And with menopause, I don't know if you've noticed this, Lucille, but something happens to women around 50 and
Hmm.
they go kind of crazy. And
They can.
I lost a lot of friendships as they were turning 50, which is
Hmm.
really interesting. Like they went to a completely different personality that
It's interesting. Yeah.
was have you experienced that? I'm lucky now. I'm going to be 55, so I'm over that now. I hopefully it's not going to happen to me still. I hope it's still not coming. But something happens with menopause and women's brains. Something
Yes,
changes.
that can happen. Yeah, for sure. And that's such a complicated topic. Sometimes for my clients, what I've noticed is it's not that they have taken on a whole new set of issues that they are seeing the world in a different way. It's that they have the same grievances, same issues that they always had, but it's like the hormonal changes and all the stress that they're undergoing just make them want to vomit it all out.
Yeah,
Right? Where
yeah,
they kept a lot of stuff in, they did, oh, that would offend her, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, you let hell break loose when you're having
yeah,
menstrual
yeah,
menopausal issues, right?
yes.
But then again, another feature of that too that I find refreshing is sometimes when women, get through menopause and they don't have a really difficult time, but what does happen, they tend to get more into truth telling. They're not the sweet little agreeable, 30 or 40-year-olds who, want to have everything nice and lovely and everybody share a consensus. They're kind of like coming out and just saying it like it is, which I actually appreciate. I find that really refreshing,
Me too.
because there's nothing more uncomfortable than knowing that somebody disagrees with you, but they are appeasing you.
Yeah,
You
and they're
know, they
scared to say it. Yeah,
they're scared to say it, right?
yeah, I know.
And I think a lot of women actually, after they go through their menopause, they do feel empowered. They do
Yes,
feel more empowered, which is a nice aspect of getting through that period of life, right?
absolutely.
Anyway, the research, as I say, there's not necessarily a huge amount of it, but at the same time, I would recommend to lots of women who are in that state of how do I find a friendship? I really need friends. I don't know how to go about it. There's more and more stuff out there to help you, podcasts and things like that. So I really suggest to women, don't wing it. Don't just wing it anymore, like you thought you could do when you were in your teens or whatever. There's a whole new landscape out there. Learn about it, right? And I do not buy the myth. I know you don't either, Lynn. I do not buy the myth that it's harder to make friends as you get older.
Yeah,
I don't buy it at all.
it hasn't been for me. No, definitely not.
Right.
But also
Um,
you get more selective. So for example,
yes.
when I was younger, maybe looking for friends to party with, hang out with, now it's more, like you said, it has more depth. And I
Mhm.
also have come to the point where I really like my own company. So I'm
Yes.
completely happy to go hiking on my own, go swimming, go walking, and I just love my own company. So for
Yeah.
someone to come and enter my space, they need to really add to this euphoria that I'm living in already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And so
Yeah.
I'm happy to have someone come in, but only if they're adding value to it. So I think that that's really important point. Maybe some people are not in this happy place where I am on their own, and they're waiting for, just like when you're waiting for a relationship to complete you or a man to
Yes.
complete you, you're waiting for a friend to kind of balance you out. then it's a little bit more difficult. But I think when you're in a good place and you're projecting this energy, then you're attracting other people that are also in a good
Yes.
place, in a happy place, and then you can have this beautiful friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the other thing that is often cited as a problem in female relationships, I don't know what your experience has been with it, is gossiping.
Yes.
Okay. Gossiping is a big one. The friendship coach that I mentioned earlier, she makes a very good distinction. There are two types of gossip, okay, if we think about it, because gossip is talking about other people when they're not present, right? And sometimes that can be very neutral or positive, right? So, Lynn, listen, my friend, who's a naturopath, she just wrote a book, and it's so exciting. She got all her wisdom out on in this book. It's terrific. That's gossip, right?
Yes. It could
Right?
be. Yeah.
It could
Yes.
be.
Yeah.
But then there's the gossip that's more malicious. It's the gossip where, maybe one or more, two or more, should has to be two or more people who are insecure,
Yes.
insecure and envious, start backbiting some third person, right, behind their back. And that is hugely destructive. Not necessarily always for the person who's being talked about, although it could have ramifications for them, right? But what it does is, and you would know this very well, Lynn, complaining generates cortisol release, right?
Yes.
That has so many negative impacts on our own health and well-being.
Yes.
And the more you gossip or the more you're negative, just even take just general negativity, complaining, the more you're actually shrinking the size of your hippocampus, which is a part of your brain that is so important for memory. You're also less able to problem solve because it's affecting your frontal lobes as well. It has so many negative, this putting out of cortisol has so many negative impacts on the people who are doing the malicious gossiping. If you're sensitive enough and somebody starts doing that, you can maybe tolerate a little bit of that, but then you will start feeling how awful it feels in your own body.
And why do we do that? Why do, and especially women are a lot more guilty of this than men?
Well, men do it too. But anyway, you may be right. Women probably do it more because we talk more to one another.
Yes.
But one of the reasons is, again, insecurity. If you feel like you're lesser than, you're lacking, everybody's got it better than you, then you have a couple of ways to go with that. Number one is you could sink deeper into it and you become this victim. You become self-pitying. You have this story constantly playing in your mind. Oh, well, that person got what I deserved, or that person got it, but I can never have it. And they must have done something not in integrity to get that, because, and then you find somebody else who's exactly on the same page with you. And that mirroring effect where you're both doing it actually does feel gratifying in a weird, perverse way. It feels gratifying where the two of you get together and you can just chew on everybody else. And you feel self-righteous in doing it. It does boost, to a certain extent, it does do things like boost dopamine. Yeah. And it gives you a sense of false bonding with that other person.
Yes, that's correct. That is absolutely right. Yes.
And I call it false bonding because, yes, you're both on the same page. Yes, you can get into this very easily. You can talk to each other for hours about this, but it's based on insecurity, fear, negativity, which is like, it's like drifting in quicksand. There's no substance to it. It won't get you to a higher level in your life. God forbid that one of you decides to pull out of it and start maybe making something out of your life. That ends the relationship. The other one then gets angry at you for wanting to pull out. So it is, it's really pernicious when it's like that. And people have to be responsible. If you're feeling like you're uncomfortable with it, if you're feeling like you're going along with it because the group is going along with that malicious gossiping,
Yeah.
it's your responsibility to say, is this good for me? Is it good for us? What do I need to do here? What do
And
I
you
need
know
to
what
do?
always happens, like when you're gossiping with someone like that, you know that when you're not in the room, the same crap is being said about you.
That's exactly right.
So,
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
not special, that person's not going
Sure.
to turn around and gossip. They're going to turn around and gossip about you
That's right.
the same way.
Yes. Great
So, and
point.
how does that make you feel? I mean, usually that's going to
Mhm.
make you feel pretty crappy.
Sure. It absolutely is. So that's a toxicity that you have to be on guard for,
Yes,
you know. Now,
absolutely.
sometimes you can say things about people, you can say, listen, I'm really concerned about our friend so and so, she's withdrawn, she's not texting back. We don't see much of her. Like, what do you know what's going on with her? Should we
Yeah.
reach out? In that respect, if it's showing some concern or empathy, and you really do want to help the other person, I think that's a perfectly valid thing to discuss with your friends.
I
Yeah.
agree completely. Lucille,
Mhm.
in closing, let's talk quickly about women who say they don't need friends and never had girlfriends, and they went through their whole lives and they said they never needed to have friends in their lives and they're quite happy without it. Do you think that's possible?
I haven't yet met the person who really embodies that
Mhm.
all the way through, but there could be. There
Mhm.
could be, you
Yeah.
know. Most of the time when I've heard women assert that, it's in reaction to trauma
Mhm.
from their past history with female friendships or with females, period. A lot of it can be due to very dysfunctional childhood, where they were. I had a friend who was like, one of three sisters in a family, and they were always competing with one another. So
Yeah.
she always gravitated towards men. She never found that happening
Yeah.
in her male friendships, right?
Yeah.
But you have to kind of dig deep, and you have to ask, listen, if you could have a really good, close, supportive relationship with a woman, would you take it? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Of course.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Okay, guys. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up. That was very interesting, and we could talk about this for we
For a
can go down
long
all
time,
kinds of
yes.
different rabbit holes. But it's definitely a very interesting topic, and I think Dr. Lucille and I both agree that friendships, female friendships, are always important throughout the life cycle, right? And they enrich our
Absolutely.
lives. They can make our lives better. The trick is to pick the right friends.
Correct.
Correct.
Absolutely. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment and share. And we are always open to feedback and suggestions about topics you'd love to hear about.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you guys in the next one.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the ReWilded Human podcast. We hope you're leaving with insights to reconnect with your natural, vibrant self. Remember, the information shared here is for educational and inspirational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any personal health concerns. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. We'll see you next time, ready to dive even deeper. Stay wild, stay true, and stay tuned.